我喺度中話派冇得出嚟做咯。
我揾到梗係要介人可以冇事嘅性。
You are listening to a conversation on Jackson Street in Seattle, Washington, where the people act. The people act. These are true stories, tape recorded in communities across the nation where people are working together to build a better future. The People Act is presented by the TV Radio Workshop established by the Ford Foundation and produced by the CBS Radio Network. Every voice and sound is real. No actors are used. Now, here again is your narrator, the noted reporter, Robert Trout. Like Rome, Seattle, Washington is built on 7 hills. This is the story of the people who live near the one some call Profanity Hill. Our guide, brisk, slender Mrs. Ruth Manka, met us in front of a red brick building on Main Street.
Hello, Mr. Trout. Why don't we go inside? This is the Japanese Buddhist church.
Now, Mrs. Manka, you said there was an important story here in this neighborhood, and I'm going to put you on the spot and say, show me.
All right, Mr. Trout. This story is important. It's the story of the people, about 12,000 of them who live in this area around Jackson Street. Of course, I'll have to warn you right from the start, I'm prejudiced. These are my people, and I've worked with them for 5 years. I've been watching them grow. And maybe my pride in what they're doing makes me a bad reporter, but you'll have to be the judge of that one.
All right, fine. And we'll watch you like a hawk. Now, how do we begin to get this story?
Well, let's start right here in this church. The congregation here today is mostly Issei. That's first-generation Japanese. There are roughly 5,000 Japanese and Japanese Americans in this area, both first and second generations, old, new. Now, let's move a few doors down the street. This is Madame Nakatani's music and dancing school.
Yes, I've seen some of that dancing in the Orient.
It's 17th century stuff.
Any 20th century around here?
Yes, down on Jackson Street.
I must admit, I understand this music a little better.
Yes, that's the Negro Elks Band. It's one of the best in the city. I'd guess that there are about 2,000 Negroes who live in this area. This is a Filipino bamboo dance. It takes a lot of practice to jump between those moving bamboo poles. We've got about 1,000 Filipinos in the area, and believe me, that's a lot of jumping. This is an old Chinese orchestra. There are about 3,000 Chinese here. You see, this is the oldest part of town. It's been called a lot of names: Japtown, Chinatown, Skid Row, Little Singapore. The official name is the International Center, but few people call it that. Usually they call it less complimentary names.
Like Profanity Hill. Where did that name come from?
Well, you see, years ago, the old Seattle courthouse was up on top of that hill, and that hill was a lot steeper. The attorneys, the portly boys who had to trudge up that hill every day. You know what happens every other step they took. You can see how it got its name originally. But then later on, when the area decayed into a slum, the name stuck for another reason. You see, this area is a melting pot of Chinese, Japanese, Filipino, Negro, and white. A melting pot that hasn't melted. And that's the story I want you to see. It's a story of what happens when you throw 12,000 people of different backgrounds, different cultures, different ideas, throw them together in a slum area and say to them, get along as best you can, make your own way. Well, this is what I've seen happen. Come along and meet Bob Groves.
We find Bob Groves at the Negro Elks Club, a well-dressed man in his early 50s with a brilliant smile.
I think I was just about the best acquainted Negro in the city of Seattle, I would say among the Japanese and the Chinese population. And I can't remember over one occasion in a period of 20-some years that I had the privilege of any type of a social life, even have a cup of coffee together.
In a two-story frame house on 17th Avenue, we met a pretty second-generation Japanese girl, a graduate of the University of Washington.
When I was a little girl, my mother used to caution me not to go into Chinatown. And the Chinese down there used to have trapdoors where little girls would fall into and maybe be sold to the circus. This was true as far as I know of the feelings of most of the Japanese about Chinatown, and I know that none of my girlfriends ever ventured down that way.
You see what the problems were: the clannishness, the prejudice, the suspicion, the way each group built a wall around itself.
I can see the problem, all right, and it is a tough one. And now we're out here because we've heard that you tackled the problem head-on. Tell us, Ruth, how did you go about it?
Well, it's kind of funny how things get started sometimes. A YMCA director named Lynn Russell got 12 or 15 people together under the auspices of the Council of Social Agencies to talk about recreation facilities in the area. But they soon saw the problem was a lot bigger than that. They set up an informal group they called the Jackson Street Committee, and with Merlin Payne and Leela Hall, they talked to community leaders, tried to see if there wasn't some project they could all work on, some project that was really needed.
I don't suppose you had any trouble finding a project with so much to be done.
That's right. We came up with an idea for a TB campaign. You see, we had 3% of the population, but 22% of the TB. So Tony Alicina, the principal of the grade school, and Mrs. Spear of the Anti-Tuberculosis League, and Mrs. Charles Kleiss of the Council of Social Agencies called a meeting of the Jackson Street Committee.
I wonder how many of the people in the area realize that tuberculosis is a major health problem down here.
I don't think many do.
Do you think the people will get together and work on this project?
I think that all the people in the area are interested, and when they know that this is one of the vital spots in the community, I think that they would be very glad to do their share.
Then it would involve a pretty strenuous health education campaign, a well-planned health education campaign before we brought the Christmas Hill X-ray unit down here, wouldn't it?
Now the job was to get the people of the area to go to the mobile unit.
Sure, and we got them through the taxi drivers.
The taxi drivers?
Well, we figured they knew everybody, and they got around every place, so we got them to go around for us.
Hello, Bill. Have you been down to have your picture taken yet?
What pictures?
The X-ray.
Oh, I don't know anything about...
Well, you like to go down? Come on down. I'll give you a lift.
Well, I'll be down with you.
Well, come on. Let's go down now. I'll drive you on down to my car. Hello, John. When the last time you had your chest X-ray?
But who are you, anyhow?
Well, I'm representing...
I didn't see you before.
Well, we're trying to get all the people in the neighborhood check X-rays.
Well,
And it's all free. And just come on, go down with me to the mobile unit. I'll drive you down, and it won't take you long. You can come right back and go back to bed.
Sounds as if your taxi drivers were pretty hard to resist.
Well, believe me, they were, and they kept the clinic busy. In 5 days, we checked 878 people for TB. And then the committee got into another project, a cleanup campaign. And that turned out pretty well, too. So about that time, some 40 people met at the Elks Club to talk about taking another big step. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we might as well get started. As perhaps you all know, the purpose of this meeting is to decide whether or not we want to carry on with some kind of an organization that would be lasting and permanent in this community. Mr. Velasco, have you something you'd like to say on this matter?
Madam Chairman, as president of the Filipino community and as secretary of the Cannery Workers Union, it seems to me that if we get into the bigger area of community organization, we could render our efforts more to the welfare of the whole group.
Thank you, Mr. Velasco. Mr. Goon, do you have anything to say?
Madam Chairman, I am just representing Mr. Liu Kay,
who is our official spokesman for the Chinese community, I will say that whatever is discussed here this evening, I'll be glad to bring that information back to Mr. K for action.
Thank you, Mr. Goon. Mr. Sakahara, do you have any comments?
Well, Madam Chairman, our past experience in our two projects, the TB campaign and the cleanup campaign, has convinced me that we do have a great possibility and can work together in such an organization.
Thank you. Mr. Rowell, what would you like to say?
I don't represent anyone particularly, except possibly a fellow that lives up the street. But I think it will take lots of work, and I think we can do it if we'll all pitch in and do a job of work. And I, for one, will work.
Then you were really underway.
Well, for a while I thought so. But soon after I was appointed executive secretary of the Jackson Street Council, we realized something was wrong.
What was that?
Well, we didn't really know. You see, for a year we had just sort of piddled along, not really getting very much done. And then our first anniversary meeting came up. We met at the grade school, about 50 of us. And we found out what was wrong the hard way. One of the neighborhood ministers got up to speak.
This is a meeting of the people of the Jackson Street area. That's what the program says. Where are the people from the Jackson Street area? Why aren't they here? Why is this handful of actual residents so outnumbered by outsiders? I'll tell you why. A number of people who don't live in the neighborhood or anywhere near it, have taken over. So I ask point blank, what are their motives? Ask yourself, you people of the neighborhood. There could be but one answer, exploitation. So I said to you, unless something positive is done to get rid of the outsiders, the council isn't worth the paper it's written on.
I'm sure you felt pretty unhappy about that.
Yes, and scared too. Because even though I knew he was wrong, I didn't know how the people at the meeting were going to react. And I could see this thing we'd been trying to build up just falling to pieces in a minute. Then I saw Victor Velasco, the president of the Filipino community, stand up.
Madam Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard the remarks of the previous speaker from the floor, and while he is entitled to his opinion, I would like to add that the sponsors of this meeting have nothing but the best interest of this area. Whether they actually live in this community or not is beside the question. The question of membership is clear and does not suggest discrimination against any particular group or groups. Exploitation is far from the idea of the sponsors.
Then Bob Groves got up.
Madam Chairman, it's really sickening to have a minister or any individual attack us in this manner because of the fact that during my experience in the Jackson Street era of over 30 years, I've found no individual or no preacher or no doctor or lawyer that has attempted to try to remedy some of the things that has been so offensive to public welfare. If there is any possibility of a good job being done, we as members of this era and of this organization, we wish to welcome everybody of the city of Seattle.
You must have felt pretty good then.
Well, we all did. But we also saw that the minister had been right in one thing. We hadn't reached the people of the area. But you see, the attack was just the thing we needed, the way it turned out. It was the spark. It was the catalytic agent which made the people in the area see their responsibility for the first time. Instead of ruining the council, it gave real meaning.
And where did you go from there?
Well, health was still the biggest problem, and a common one. We got a few of the doctors in the area to work with us, principally Dr. James Jackson and Dr. Henry Luke, and later some of the others. We got some of the druggists to give us supplies, and we set up a well baby clinic for the children of the area.
2 rooms, a waiting room and an examining room upstairs at the Chinese Baptist Church.
What is your name?
Ricky Marr.
And how old are you, Ricky?
4.5.
Well, that's a big boy, isn't it? Now, let's come over here and let Dr. Jackson telephone to your chest, okay?
He's not afraid. He's quite a big boy. Now, let's just listen to the old chest here. Well, the chest sounds all right. Now open the mouth. Yeah, boy. Say ah.
Ah.
That's fine. Well, Mrs. Marr, I think that maybe we ought to get Ricky's tonsils out some of these days. They're a little larger than I like to see them.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, he's a husky youngster.
Does he drink milk and get cod liver oil?
Yes, he has
milk.
All the time when I go to bed, I have some cod oil.
Well, you like cod liver oil?
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I'll have to get you a quart of it.
Well, now you've worked on a lot more than health, haven't you, Ruth?
Yes, Bob, we've gotten a new street lighting system, we've gotten new traffic lights, and we got a concrete bulkhead to hold the slide that bothered us for 40 years or more, and we've given toys to 900 youngsters on 4 different Christmases.
It sounds like a good job.
Well, we think it's a good job, but the material things are just part of the story. There's been a civic awakening here and a feeling of community that I don't believe existed before. Maybe it's best expressed by the meeting I went to the other day. Doc Shimbo, he's a florist, he presided.
The Civic Committee has initiated a project to get the voters out for the coming municipal elections. Mrs. Ruth Manka, are there any funds available for printing of placards?
Well, I think that comes right in the general line of our business. We certainly have enough in our budget. I think we can handle it that way.
Mr. Chairman, there are so many women in this Jackson Street area who have youngsters. I would suggest that women of the Jackson Street Council Board serve as babysitters so these women can go to register.
That's a very excellent idea. Mr. Velasco?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that if we could engage a truck or a car to go around in the district with the placard announcing the registration, why that will help in the publicity.
Do you have any ideas on that, Mr.
Yes,
Thomas?
I have, Mr. Shimbo. We have in this area here many automobiles that will be available in the next 4 or 5 days for taking people down to be registered. I think that the telephone number of the Jackson Street Community Council office will be put on the placard, and the people can call the Jackson Street Community Council here if they want a free ride to the poll.
Sounds simple, doesn't it?
Well, I imagine people were doing the same thing, trying to get the voters to register all over Seattle.
Yes, but not Chinese and Japanese and whites and Negroes and Filipinos, all sitting around the same table and talking over their common problems. You know, 10 years ago it couldn't have happened. 3 years ago it couldn't have happened.
But it does happen now.
Well, it's beginning to. We're making a start. We know what we have to do, and we have a new kind of feeling, I think, a sort of a pride. Let me show you. Let's go up Jackson Street. This parade is part of our international festival.
The bright flags and bunting flap in the breeze. The bright-colored lanterns strung above the streets sway gently. The people line the sidewalks 10 deep, stand on upturned boxes to get a better look. A writhing silk Chinese dragon slithers past, escorted by 100 dancers in pale blue silk pantaloons. Japanese dancers doing a step from a 2,500-year-old traditional dance called Bon Odori.
That's shamisen music. How do you like our parade, Bob?
Great, Ruth. I love parades.
Come on over to the stage on King Street. There's a performance going on right now.
A jazz band from the Negro community.
We're proud of our festival. We're proud the people of Seattle are interested in us and are getting to know us. Would you like to go over to the smorgasbord?
The smorgasbord?
Yes, at the Buddhist church. That's where the women get together and each one makes her specialty. You know, Chinese and Japanese, Southern, Filipino, Jewish, all kinds of dishes. I think sometime we're even going to have Swedish dishes.
Sure, let's go.
I guess this is one place where the barrier is completely broken down, in the kitchen.
Well, now we'll talk about the bread. You remember I made all the breads. I made biscuits and light rolls. And
they were delicious.
And the cornbread.
Cornbread, yes. I like that.
And I made the apple turnovers.
Oh, yes.
And they went out early.
I know it. I didn't even get a piece of that apple turnover. I waited so long and never got a piece. You'll have to make something special for me.
The last day of the year, December 31st, we always celebrate the outgoing year by eating this a noodle called soba.
And you eat that with that white cabbage, and that white cabbage means shu choy. That means long life.
Well, I don't know about the dishes they have in the southern states, but I've heard about them. On New Year's Day, they eat beans and hog joel. They say that means that you'll live long and you'll be prosperous during this year.
I guess our customs are a little bit more older, and it's carried down through generations.
Sure.
Like everybody has to eat that, regardless, young or old. Little baby has to eat that piece of white cabbage. And also the chicken has to be cooked with the legs and the head. That means everybody's well.
Oh.
I can see things have changed here, and I want to thank you, Ruth Manka, for showing me around this Jackson Street area of Seattle.
Well, Bob, we still have a long ways to go. We haven't solved all our problems yet. I guess you could say the melting pot is sort of beginning to simmer around the edges. We're not all melted, and we won't be this year, but we will be sometime.
I'm sure of it.
But you see how we've gone about doing it. Not to force people together, not just to talk slogans of brotherhood, but to show them that brotherhood pays off. Brotherhood comes about when people get together to work for the practical things they need. I think Bob Groves can sum up what happened to us.
There seemed to be a barrier that just had to be broke down. It was necessary for everybody's welfare, and it was not an individual proposition. It was a general proposition that involved all of us. It had seemed like a case of impossibility, but from actual experience and actually having the privilege of dealing with people on the types of things that we knew there was a necessity, it seemed to grow easier and easier all the time, and it's growing easier every day up until the present moment. You find it easier to call in a Japanese and a Chinese and a Negro and a Philippine and all in common harmony to deal with an obstacle that is offensive to the welfare of all.
You have just heard The People Act, narrated by Robert Trout, a documentary series presented by the TV Radio Workshop established by the Ford Foundation and produced by the CBS Radio Network. These programs are under the sponsorship of the National Committee for the People Act. Here is the committee's director, Elmore McKee.
The people of Seattle, Washington have shown what can happen when citizens tackle a problem together. We would welcome your reactions to this story. And if your community is faced with a comparable situation and you would like to help meet it, won't you write us at the People Act Center, State College, Pennsylvania? Dr. Milton S. Eisenhower and his associates there will try to put you in touch with someone in your vicinity qualified to consult with you. And if you wish a script or a record of today's program, please write us at the People Act Center, State College, Pennsylvania.
The People Act is produced by Irving Gitlin, edited by Fred Freed. Field reporters for this program were Dave Moore and Charles Romine. Original music by Norman Lockwood, conducted by Alfredo Antonini. Join us again next week when The People Act in Essex County, New Jersey.